Hey guys, how's it going? This is Dylan again and welcome back to my channel. So in the last video I walked you through creating a web service, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how to actually consume that web service from within Unity. We're going to be creating a wrapper, and that wrapper we're going to be using for our future games. So let's get into Unity and start the process. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to show you that I have the web service up and running. I'm calling the players and I'm getting players back. Then right after that, let's actually open up Unity, and I'm going to create a new Unity project. Click on new. This is going to be called Unity3d REST client. I'm going to disable Unity Analytics and then click on create project. And let's just give it a minute so that it creates the project. It's almost there. Okay, so the first thing, right click on assets, create folder, and this is where we're going to be putting all of our scripts, and then right click on the scripts folder, C# script. This is going to be called REST client. In the REST client, let's open it up, and I'm actually going to implement a singleton, and I already had code to do that. So if you want to watch a video about the singleton implementation, it's also available through some of my videos. On this video, we're going to focus on basically the communication of a RESTful web service. And I'm going to implement a new method called get. And then the get method is going to take a URL. And this is what we're going to use to basically return a list of players. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to actually add a using statement, Unity Engine, and we're going to use the networking API. In the networking API, we're going to use the www, the Unity web request, Unity web request, and we're going to do a get. Actually delete the get so you can see that we have a delete available, we have a get, a head, a post, and a put. So that should give us enough implementation in order for us to call our web service. So I'm going to call into the get, and I'm just going to pass in the URL. And I also want to make sure that I am doing a yield because we're using an enumerator. We're going to do yield return www, and we're going to send the web request. When that completes, we're going to check to see if we have any kind of errors. If we do have an error, we're going to say debug.log. Basically, we're going to display that to the console. If we didn't get an error and we also completed doing the request, I want to make sure that I can read the data, so I'm just going to say JSON result equals system that encoding text that encoding that UTF-8 get string, and then we're going to get the data from the download handler data, and for now we're just going to log it. Because I just want to make sure that this part is working before we move on. Perfect. So then the next thing, let's go back into Unity, and we're going to create a new game object, an empty. I'm going to call this game. I'm actually going to be creating a new script, and I'm actually going to call it game. Double click on it to open it. And on this script, I'm going to delete the update implementation. We don't need that. But we're going to need a variable here, and this is going to be called web URL, which we're going to be used to point to our own web service. And then I'm also going to start a core routine for REST client or singleton or get, and we're going to pass in the web URL. We haven't set the web URL yet, and to do that I'm going to open up a new instance of Visual Studio so that we can have two instances running, one with the web service and one with our game. So let's give it just a few seconds. And it's still loading. Perfect. And we're going to open up Unity RESTful service. So click on it. As soon as it's open, we're going to basically launch the web service. And it's loading. Okay, looks like it's restoring. Perfect. So what I want to do is I just want to hit play to launch it. As soon as it launches, we're going to copy the URL that it generates, and that's going to be our endpoint. Let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, so it looks like it's launching now. Build it. And we can probably open up Chrome. And this is the previous instance. Let's make sure that, there we go. There's our new instance. And we can actually just refresh this one, just to make sure that one's working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that URL. I'm going to go into Unity. And I'm going to let Unity compile the code. And as soon as it compiles the code, we're going to see the web URL in the inspector. And just give it a few seconds. Okay, perfect. So we're going to basically paste the endpoint. And I'm just going to add a trailing slash. Perfect. So if we hit play, we should see the players list display in the console. And it looks like that's working. We have Michael Jordan, we have Steve Jobs, and another Michael Jordan, which is fine. Okay, so I'm just going to stop it, and I'm going to go back into Unity. So that is great, but we need to be able to use that information and deserialize it to an object. So if we go back into Unity, I'm going to create a new folder under scripts, and I'm going to call this contracts. And in that scripts folder, so I'm going to create two scripts. One is going to be the player, and the other one is going to be a player list. And the other one will be not a folder. Let's right click on it, C# script, player list. And let's open it up, either one. I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm going to go back into the Unity Visual Studio instance. Expand contracts, player. I'm actually not going to inherit from mono behavior on any of these two. These are going to be objects, just Pocos. Perfect. And what I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to say public list player players. Perfect. And then in the player instance, we're basically just gonna build our contract. So in this one, we're gonna need an ID. We're also gonna need full name, and we're also gonna need a score. And we don't need those spaces. Perfect. So we have a player and a player list. So now what we're gonna do here is, right now the get is just basically displaying a log entry. So what I want to do is I want to use the JSON utility from JSON, and we're going to convert this to a player list. This is what we're going to get out of the web service, and we're going to deserialize it to a player list. And the data that we're going to be deserializing is the JSON result. And we need to create a variable of that type, of player list, and player list. So that's great, but we don't have a way to, to send that information back. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use an action, and that action is gonna send a player list back. And this is actually gonna be the callback. And we will execute the callback with the player list. Perfect. So we have a get, and let's go back into our game. And now the signatures don't match, and that's because we need to implement a new method. And this new method is going to take a player list, which is basically going to be the callback. And in that callback, what I want to do is I'm going to do basically a player. I'm going to loop through each player in the player list. And we're also going to be just displaying each player. So I'm just going to say player ID, and the player ID is going to be player the ID, and we're going to say player full name and player score. Perfect. So now what we're doing is we're going to do a core routine. We're going to execute the get, and if everything was successful, the callback will be players, where we're going to be passing in a player list. So we go back into Unity and we hit play. We should see a log entry for each player. And it looks like we're getting an error. So let's double click on the null reference exception. And I'm actually going to go into Unity and see what's happening. So we're executing the get. We are converting, deserializing the information to a string. Here is a JSON data. And we're casting that to a player list. So that should work just fine. So I'm going to add a breakpoint here, and I'm going to attach it to the process. I'm going to hit attach. I'm going to go back into Unity, and we're going to hit play. I'm going to step over, and I'm going to see what JSON result is. It looks like we have our players, and let's see if we get our player list. And we did not get the player list. And players, let's go back into. So I think what's happening is these are not serializable. So we need to use system.serializable on both of these. Otherwise, it's not gonna allow us to deserialize these objects. So that looks fine. So let's go back into Unity and then hit play one more time. And it looks like that's not working. So we're telling Unity that those two objects are serializable. So that is working. So then the next thing that I want to do is I also want to implement, let's go back into this one. I also want to implement a delete. So I'm just going to change this to say delete. And in the delete, there's really no callback. It doesn't return anything. So, but I'm just going to say, okay, I want to delete that ID. We're going to build a URL, params, and we're just going to say string.format. We're going to pass in the URL, and we're going to pass in the ID, and then comma URL, comma ID, parentheses, and then the URL here, it's going to be the URL with parameters. And looks like that looks fine. We don't need that extra one. Okay, perfect. And then instead of doing a get, we're going to do a delete. And if we go back into the implementation of the service, we look at the delete, like I was saying, there's really no return. So if we go back in here, what we're going to do here, instead of trying to deserialize anything, we're just going to do debug.log, and we're going to do a string.format, deleted player with ID, and then we'll basically just pass in the ID. And we're basically assuming that things are working 100%. There's definitely validation that needs to be added to the server side. So for simplicity, we can just keep it that way, and that should work. The other method that I want to implement is basically a post. And the post is going to allow us to create a player. We're just going to say new player. And in the post, we don't need that URL. Perfect. And we're also going to need the post data. So what I'm going to do is actually going to do, let's see, so we can do JSON utility to JSON, and then in the to JSON I'm going to basically pass in the player. So that's a way to convert an object to a JSON string representation. So we're doing a post, here's a URL. Before we do that, I found a few issues with just doing it this way. I needed to do what's called the upload handler, and in the upload handler I needed to specify the content type, and we're going to say that the content type is going to be application.json. The other thing that I needed to do is I needed to specify the data that I was going to upload, and this has to be bytes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change, this is going to be string JSON data, and then we're going to get the bytes from the JSON string. To do that, we can do system, the text, the encoding, the UTF-8, and then get bytes. And the get bytes, there's an override that actually allows you to do a string. So we're going to use that override. And let's see, content type, progress, upload bytes. Upload bytes. Content type. So this is read only. If I remember correctly, let's go into so there is an example right around. So here's the content type. Okay, I see. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna say equal, and then a new upload handler, and then inside of it we're gonna put in the bytes. Perfect. Okay, so we also need the JSON data. So the way that this is working is we're converting our player to a JSON representation. We're doing a post with the URL and the JSON data. We're also specifying application JSON in the upload handler as a content type, and then we're passing the JSON data as a bytes array. So the other thing that I want to do is I also want to implement a callback. So I'm going to do the same thing that we did on the other get, except this time I want to do I'm actually gonna do system.action. Actually, it's gonna be the same thing. And then this is my callback. Capital B. Perfect. So we're gonna be inserting a new record, a new player, and then we're basically gonna get a new list back that should include that new player. Okay, perfect. So now let's go back into our game. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comment that out. And instead of doing a get, I'm gonna do a post. And I still wanna do get players, but this time I wanna do a new player. And I'm going to basically insert a new player. The new player is gonna be, let's add a large number. Let's do 50,000. The full name of the player is gonna be, let's try Thomas Johnson. And then for the score, we're gonna do a large number as well. Perfect. So let's actually go back into Unity. And I'm gonna clear the console and I'm gonna hit play. And if everything works, we should see not an error. So I'm gonna double click it. And I wanna see what's happening here. REST client. So what I'm gonna do, let's see, let's go back into our post, upload handler raw, and we're getting the, let me look at what the signature, this takes a bytes, which is what we're passing. We're also setting the, I think there's one more thing that we need to do, request header, and I'm gonna say the content type is application JSON. I'm gonna set the request header as well as the upload handler content type, just to make sure we're not missing any information. And in addition, let's actually add, I'm gonna add a breakpoint right here, and I'm gonna attach it to the Unity process. Then I'm gonna go back into our web service, and the cool thing is we can actually debug this one as well since it's running. So I'm gonna go back into Unity, I'm gonna hit play, and we're gonna be able to debug the whole thing from the front end all the way to the back end. And let's make sure that part's working. We're hitting play. And looks like we're getting into our post in our web service. If I look at the web service, and looks like we're getting the person passed in, which is great. Now I'm gonna hit play. I'm gonna get back into Unity. I'm gonna basically convert the data to JSON. And now we're gonna try to deserialize it. And let's see, we're getting our players. And according to, this is thinking just for 1 minute. According to this JSON list, everything was set correctly. And we have 4 players. Okay, perfect. And our last player was added. So I'm gonna hit play. Now if we go back into Unity, we see Thomas Johnson was added, so that worked. Okay, perfect. So now if we go back into our REST client implementation, just to give you a walkthrough, we created a singleton. We also created a get method that allows us to basically get a list of players. We also implemented the delete method where you can pass in an ID if you want to delete a player. And we also did a post method where we can pass in a new player and then get a list of players back from the web service. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up right here. You could extend this and add an update if you wanted to. Basically, it will be just adding a put instead of a post, and you could add other methods such as head or patch that I'm not going to cover in this video. But if you have any questions or comments, let me know, and also don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much, guys.